The global elites plan to control your life and the economy. This is something they're calling the Great Reset Agenda. I've done a couple videos on it before. I'll put links in the description below. Today, we're going to take a deep dive into what this really means. What are their objectives and how will it impact your life in the future? I'm going to explain this to you in 3 simple, fast steps. Step number 1, let's go over their disturbing utopian vision. And this is going to get really bizarre here. It seems like something out of a sci-fi movie, but of course, I'm going to back it up with data from their website. By the time we get to step number 3, and we put all these pieces of the puzzle together, it is definitely going to be time to pour yourself that stiff drink. So let's dive right into it. They have a blog post that came out in 2016, 2017 that I think really summarizes their vision for 2030. So in the next 10 years, what will the United States look like? And the title of this blog post, and I'm not making this up, we're going to go to the blog post and I'll show you, is I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better. And there's a clip that's been going around Twitter that shows exactly what they're referencing. It's this guy who's smiling, the sun is shining, and he says, I own nothing and I am happy. Editor, let's go ahead and throw up that clip. So basically, this vision they have for the future is everything is controlled by artificial intelligence. I'm calling it the AI brain cloud, or ABC for short. They need something catchy that everyone can remember. It's just like your ABCs. So all the data from all the individuals, whether it's coming from their smartphone or a chip implanted into their brain, and I know this is tinfoil hat stuff, but it's right on their website. We're going to check it out in just a moment. All this data is going to the cloud, this AI brain. And from there, it's making all the decisions. It's pointing people in the direction of whether they want to stay in a house, whether they need drones to take them goods and services, whether flying cars, not making this up, comes and picks people up just like an Uber would now. But basically, their vision for your future is to control your life and the economy through central planning and artificial intelligence, robotics, and everything going into the cloud. Big data is going to tell us how we need to allocate resources in the real economy. More on that in step number 3. And I know this sounds completely outrageous, so before we go any further, let's check out the blog post I was referring to, their vision of the future, entitled, I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better. I want to first point out a couple things. Number 1, they changed their title. The original title, like I said, was Welcome to 2030, I own nothing, have no privacy, and life has never been better. And I have to go to Forbes to find their original article, because now when you look at it, on the World Economic Forum's own website, you can see they've changed the title to Here's How Life Could Change in My City by the year 2030. So obviously, they had so much pushback on this, they had to change the title. And further evidence, they got a lot of negative pushback on this, as they put in a disclaimer saying this isn't their vision. They just want to open this up for discussion. But that was never, ever a part of the original document. This is like Jerome Powell coming out in September of 2019 and telling everybody, this is not QE.
This is not QE.
When he knows, everyone at the Fed knows, the marketplace, and even the average Joe knows darn well that's exactly what it is. The other thing I wanted to point out is this article was written by an actual adult. And I know that sounds funny, but wait till we get in and start reading some of what they said. It was written by Ida Auken, who is a member of parliament in Denmark. And it's completely shocking that this wasn't written by a 7-year-old. Let's get into the article. Welcome to the year 2030. Welcome to my city. Or should I say our city? I don't own anything. I don't own a car. I don't own a house. I don't own any appliances or any clothes. We have access to transportation, accommodation, food, and all the things we need in our daily lives, of course, based on what she defines as needs. One by one, all these things became free. So it ended up not making sense for us to own much. So you don't own anything and things are free. Sounds a little bit like communism, but more on that in just a moment. It made no sense for us to own cars anymore because we could call a driverless vehicle or a flying car for longer journeys within minutes. Now I can hardly believe we accepted congestion and traffic jams, not to mention the air pollution from those combustion engines. What were we thinking? And this is where it starts to get really bizarre. And keep in mind, this is not only an adult writing this, but this is a member of Parliament in Denmark and a member of the World Economic Forum that's summarizing their views on the future. Sometimes I use my bike when I go see my friends. And it's interesting, she owns a bike, but she can't own anything else, not even clothes. I enjoy the exercise and the ride. It kind of gets the soul to come along for the journey. Funny how some things never seem to lose their excitement. Walking, biking, cooking, drawing, and even growing plants. It makes perfect sense and reminds us of how our culture emerged from a close relationship with nature. Now things go from bizarre and creepy to nightmarish. In our city, we don't pay any rent because someone else is using our free space whenever we don't need it. My living room is used for business meetings when I'm not there. Once in a while, I will choose to cook for myself. It's easy. The necessary kitchen equipment is delivered at my door within minutes. Since transportation became free, we stopped having all those things stuffed into our home. Why keep a pasta maker and a crepe cooker crammed into your cupboards? We can just order them when we need them. And here's where we go right into the twilight zone. Shopping? I can't really remember what that is. For most of us, it has been turned into choosing things to use. Sometimes I find this fun, and sometimes I just want the algorithm to do it for me. It knows my taste better than I do by now. So remember, all your thoughts and decision making are going straight into the cloud, into ABC, Artificial Intelligence Brain Cloud. And now we go from Twilight Zone straight into Hunger Games. My biggest concern is all the people who do not live in our city, those we lost on the way, those who decided that it became too much, all this technology, those who felt obsolete and useless when robots and AI took over big parts of our jobs, those who got upset with the political system and turned against it. I want to repeat that. Those who got upset with the political system and turned against it. They live different kind of lives outside the city in District 12. Some have formed little self-supplying communities. Others just stayed in the empty and abandoned houses in small 19th century villages. And now we go from Hunger Games straight into Orwell's 1984. Once in a while, I get annoyed about the fact I have no real privacy, nowhere I can go and not be registered. I know that somewhere, everything I do, think, and dream is being recorded. Okay, I'll give you a moment just to kind of shake off the creepiness, and we'll go over what that would look like right here on the dry erase board. AI, brain cloud, like I said earlier, or ABC, you gotta know your ABCs. There would be a chip in everyone's brain that was transmitting signals into ABC at all times. It would also be on their phone, so all the transactions they did would go into ABC as well. They didn't talk about this specifically in the article, but in reading through the World Economic Forum's website, you see it mentioned in there constantly. So all of this data is going into the cloud, ABC, and then it's making decisions because, of course, it's way smarter than any human being or group of human beings could ever be. And then it's making decisions as to how resources are being allocated in the real economy. So we've got this guy here that's just thinking, I need a car. That goes right into ABC, and ABC sends a flying car out to pick him up. And remember, she talked about it in the blog post. I'm not making this up. Or we've got Prozac Paula. She is just so happy riding her bike with her daisies in the basket. She's got these spiral eyes, of course, just like a zombie. But she's thinking, I would love pasta. So AI Brain Cloud takes the drone and it sends it over to, we're not going to call it her house because she doesn't really own it. We'll call it the house. And the drone takes her everything that she needs to make a pasta dinner. And just a quick FYI, I think Prozac Paula is actually on the parliament in Denmark. Who knew? So these guys are hanging out in the smart house. Joe, Moody the millennial, and heroin guy. He's from one of my last videos, or I like to refer to him as the US economy. He is passed out there with his heroin needle. Who knows what's dripping out of that? But all these people just thought to themselves, I would like a house to be in right now. So ABC just opened up the door and sent them the coordinates on their cell phone. They just walked right over and walked right into the house. Wouldn't that be fun to go back to a house from a hard day of work, walk in and have all these random people laying around your couch and some guy on heroin having convulsions in the corner? That sounds like utopia to me for sure. Oh, but wait, there is more. It gets better. Prozac Paula rides her bike over to the house, walks over everybody, goes upstairs and takes a nap. But while she's dreaming, all of her thoughts are going into ABC. See, she's dreaming ABC is great, ABC is good. So ABC knows that, and he's very appreciative. So he sends the drone over to her house to drop off a sweater that says, ABC is my co-pilot. Very, very nice. But remember, there are some people that Ida is really, really worried about because they may look at this system and say, I want nothing to do with that. That would be me. But where do they go? Well, they have to live out in the forest and all the dirt. And I really feel sorry for them, Ida was saying. And I'm sure Prozac Paula would feel the same. But they have their own property and they have to grow their own food and trade back between one another. They have internal combustion engines like these trucks that ride around. And they can even make their own decisions. Ooh, yuck. Who could stand doing that? They can choose the color of their truck, or I'd like to point out, they could also have a cyber truck from Tesla, something green and something electrical. But all these people in District 12, we'll call it, they're the cretins, the outcasts, or maybe we'll even call them the rebels that don't appreciate just how good life can be when you're living under a system where you own nothing and have absolutely no privacy. But of course, you know what this system is called. It's communism. Communism is basically where you have no private property. Capitalism is where you have private property. That's for all those rubes and rebels that live in District 12. And I want to point out, a lot of people go back and forth on Twitter or in the comments of my YouTube videos and say, well, the Fed is part of capitalism because it's a privately owned entity. And that may be true, but when I'm referring to capitalism, what I am a proponent of is free market capitalism, not just capitalism. You have to have the free market component. So when you add that into the description, the Fed and the central planners are the antithesis of free market capitalism. But let's go to some quotes to really prove my point about how this, what I described on the whiteboard, and what Prozac Paula, or Ida, was describing in her blog post is just straight communism. And this is a quote from Karl Marx. The theory of the communist may be summed up in a single sentence: abolition of private property. And there's one thing we know for sure. The global elites at the World Economic Forum definitely want to abolish private property. Step number 2. If you own nothing, well then who on earth will own everything? I think you guessed it. The government, of course. And I know last step was really some sci-fi, tinfoil hat, crazy stuff, but right from the World Economic Forum's own website. So now let's get into the economics. How would this work? How would the government go from being $27 trillion in debt to owning absolutely everything, or at least the vehicles and the housing, according to this blog post? We have to start by thinking through what would happen if we had a GFC 2.0, what we should have had back in March if the Fed and the government would not have stepped in and taken all of these artificial measures to prop up the market. But going back to 2008, if you recall, the automakers got absolutely destroyed to the point where they had to receive bailouts or they would have gone bankrupt. And the housing market went down by 50%. But now it's different. In 2020, corporate debt is at all-time highs. The balance sheets are far worse than they were back in 2008. Also, consumer debt, very close to an all-time high. And we know housing prices are definitely at all-time highs in most major markets in the United States. People have been using those just like ATMs, like they did in 2006. Our whole entire economy is built on asset prices, debt, and confidence. And really, it's all about asset bubbles. And if you don't believe me, just think through what would happen if asset prices in the United States went down by 50% and just stayed there. Our economy is 70% consumption. How much consumption is a result of high asset prices? I would argue a good majority of it. So if a lot of these corporations were going bust and the average Joe was losing their home because they couldn't afford to make the payments, then that would give an opportunity for the Fed to come in and buy up those assets to once again try to prop up these markets. And right about now, your friend and family member Fred is stepping in and says, "George, you are crazy. We saw what happened back in March. The Fed and the government are never going to let asset prices go down again." One thing I would point out to your friend and family member Fred is the case study of Japan back in 1990. This is a chart from 1986 all the way to 2010 of the Japanese real estate market. It peaks way up here at 220 in 1990 and then comes all the way down over the span of the next 15 years. 15 years. It goes down and down and down and down. And I'd like to point out the Japanese stock market is also lower today than it was in 1990. And the reason I use Japan as an example is because they've done everything the Fed and the government is currently doing. We're about 10 years ahead of Japan. They've done QE infinity. They've had negative interest rates. They've purchased stocks, all these ETFs like the Fed did back in March. Japan has been there and done that. They've bought 60% of the JGBs, the Japanese government debt. Everything that we would do in the future, most likely, Japan has already done. In spite of this, their real estate market has gone down for 15 years, and their stock market is lower today than it was in 1990. And you also may be saying to yourself, yeah, George, but the Fed and the government are going to come in and print so much money that we're going to get consumer price inflation, and that's going to keep assets elevated. But let's go back and remember the 1970s, stagflation, the definition of stagflation. The stock market between 1972 and 1974 went down by almost 50% in nominal terms, not adjusted for inflation. So when you actually adjust for the rate of inflation, purchasing power, they went down by a lot more than just 50%. So my point is asset prices can go down while money printing and consumer prices are going up. So what would happen if we saw something like that in the United States, an economy that is completely propped up by asset prices? The answer is the average Joe and the corporations would be desperate to sell to anyone. So the Fed comes in and says, yep, I'm your buyer. They go to average Joe, they buy his home, and they give Joe bank reserves because now Joe has a bank account with the Fed. More on that in step number 3. And guys like Elon Musk come along here with his hover shoes, his electronically powered hover shoes that are made from diesel, uranium, and baby seals. Very green and eco-friendly, I might add. He floats on in smoking something, I'm not sure, and he says, yes, Fed, I will sell Tesla to you. So Tesla and all the auto manufacturers go on to the Fed's balance sheet. Most people's homes go onto the Fed's balance sheet. But remember, the societal narrative and the political narrative right now is leaning towards MMT. And I rarely make predictions. I just try to give you information so you can come to your own conclusions. But one thing I do predict, and that is we will see MMT in the near future. It's really not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So your drunk, insolvent Uncle Sam, who's holding a sign that says, I love MMT, for obvious reasons, because he can buy more of your votes, comes in and merges the government with the Fed. So the two balance sheets become one. Whoa, time out. I want to give you a quick fun fact regarding MMT and the merger of these balance sheets. Who did President Biden, or President Harris, elect as the Treasury Secretary? None other than Janet Yellen, who is the former head of what? The Federal Reserve. In other words, the person that was in charge of the Fed's balance sheet is now in charge of the government's balance sheet. Perfect person to have in the position if you wanted to merge the balance sheets. Currently, the Fed has treasuries, government debt, as an asset on their balance sheet and bank reserves, funny money that they print or just create electronic digits and accounts of guys like average Joe, Elon Musk, and the banks under the Fed's umbrella. The government has those same treasuries as liabilities on their balance sheet, and you ask what their assets are, the answer is not much. They've got about 3.8 trillion in assets against 27 trillion in debt. So they are wildly insolvent, which is why I call this guy not only your Uncle Sam, but your insolvent Uncle Sam. So these two balance sheets merge, which is interesting because if the assets and the liabilities of both of these entities become one, it's basically like doing a debt jubilee. And of course, all the assets, like Tesla and the average Joe's house, would become an asset of the government. This is how they would own everything. And if you think this is a far-fetched idea, I would just ask you, how far-fetched do you think MMT is in the future? Editor, let's go right to the internet. This is from an article titled Primer, MMT and Abolishing Government Bond Issuance. The starting point for MMT macroeconomics is to use the accounting procedure of consolidation, combining the balance sheets of the central bank and the fiscal arm of the government, the Treasury of the United States. So just to recap, this is how it works. The economy comes crashing down. We'll call it GFC 2.0. And the government and the Fed can't prop up asset prices, or maybe they choose not to prop up asset prices. And all of these desperate sellers go to the Fed and sell their assets, the houses and all the car manufacturers. They go onto the balance sheet of the Fed. And then because MMT is so popular, they merge the two balance sheets. So the Fed's balance sheet and the government's balance sheet becomes one. So basically we have a debt jubilee. The treasuries are canceled out and all the assets on the Fed's balance sheet, including Tesla and the homes, become assets of the government. You own nothing. They own everything, and life has never been better. Step number 3, the global elite's utopian endgame. And I want to be very clear before we get into this. This is not a prediction. What I'm doing is I'm explaining things. I'm going to the World Economic Forum's website. I'm figuring out in their words what their goals are for the future, how they see the future playing out. Then I'm taking my knowledge of macroeconomics and how the system actually works. I'm combining the two, and then I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, as scary as that may sound, and figure out if I had these objectives, how would I achieve them? And this is how I would get it done. First, we have to understand the importance of price signals. They give us a ton of data, and most people don't understand how vital they are to running an efficient economy and allocating scarce resources with alternative uses. To help me out with this, we're going to use the other end, or the other side of my whiteboard. Like I said the other day, we're getting real professional here on the George Gammon YouTube channel. We're just gonna flip this, hopefully, to the other side without me smashing my fingers like I've done about 10 times this morning. All right, here we have a beautiful drawing of the United States. And up in, we'll say Canada, maybe the border up in Oregon, Washington, they're growing all of this lumber. This lumber is a scarce resource with an alternative use. And I'm getting that term directly from my favorite economist, Thomas Sowell. So up in the Northwest, we have a lumber mill, and we have KB Homes. They're a big manufacturer of housing in the United States. So let's say we have all this housing in Denver, and the prices are going up. We also have housing in Detroit, and prices are going down. Everyone is leaving Detroit for Denver. This is where all the jobs are being created, let's say, in this example. Therefore, we don't need any more housing stock in Detroit. We're oversupplied. That's why prices are going down. And we need more housing stock in Denver. That's why prices are going up. It's simple supply and demand. KB Homes recognizes this because they see the prices going up and down. So they order 2x4s, these chopped up trees, resources from the lumber mill, and KB Homes allocates those scarce resources, the 2x4s, to Denver. It does not allocate them to Detroit. The whole reason they're able to do this efficiently is because the data they get from the price signals. If they didn't have access to the data, they would inadvertently continue to transfer resources over to Detroit, and those resources would be wasted. Another way to think through the importance of prices in a very simple way. We have 3 resources. We'll call them the black resource, the blue one, and the red one. There's a lot more of the blue one than there is the red one. Therefore, the price is lower. There's more supply. So what this tells the marketplace is when they're building a home, let's say, they want to try to use more of the blue resource than they use of the red resource. Because of private property, and we'll get to that in a moment, and private ownership of KB homes, they want to make as much profit as possible. They want to avoid loss. Therefore, they're going to utilize the resource that is more prevalent, and they're going to try to avoid using the resource that is more scarce. This is why the free market and free market capitalism, going back to what we talked about in step number 1, is the most efficient way to allocate scarce resources. It revolves around prices, but for price discovery to actually work, we have to have private property. And going back to step number 2, you know that private property makes the World Economic Forum, IDA, and our boy Klaus Schwab right here, who's the head of the World Economic Forum, it makes all of them very, very angry. Even Klaus Schwab's cat, Mr. Bigglesworth. If you're not familiar with Klaus Schwab, he is the head of the World Economic Forum and the one who is really pushing this great reset agenda. Editor, go ahead and throw up a clip for the viewer. I think you will see in about 2 seconds why I think he should be a part of Spectre, or maybe more appropriately, Dr. Evil and Mr. Bigglesworth.
Now is the historical moment, the time, not only to fight severe virus, but to shape the system for the need for the post-corona era. In short, we need a great reset.
A true real-life James Bond villain for sure. But when we talk about the importance of prices, I want you to realize I'm not just making this up. This is not something that I think would be great. And to understand that further, let's go right to the internet and check out one of my favorite websites, one that you should be reading all the time, Mises.org. In an unhampered market economy, the price mechanism is the tool conducive to the most efficient desired by consumers and allocation of resources. Why? Because prices stem from the different subjective value human beings attach to the various consumer goods and services available in the economy. By repeatedly exchanging or buying and selling goods and services, sellers discover the values subjectively attached to consumption goods by demanders, the market value of goods. In other words, they understand which consumer values any single available good most, thus allowing each good to find the most eager owner. And this is what we were just referring to in the example of lumber being allocated to either Denver or Detroit. Notice that subjective appraisement of goods value is possible if and only if goods are privately owned by the exchanging agents. And this is what Klaus doesn't want. They want us to own nothing. In fact, without private ownership of goods, exchanging agents could not enjoy the profit rewarding the discovery of the most eager buyers of the goods they want to exchange on the market. They would not be able to attain the highest possible reward for the exchange. Also, absent private ownership of goods, exchanging agents could not possibly experience losses. And this is why I always say that we have to let businesses go out of business. Taking it a step further, let's go to an article titled Price Signals as Guides for Resource Allocation. The market economy depends on price signals to correctly allocate its scarce resources. Scarce resources should command higher prices than more abundant resources. Guided by correct price signals, resource users will use scarce resources with higher prices for only high value purposes, and abundant resources with lower prices for lower valued purposes. And here's the key takeaway right here, guys. If prices are absent or set incorrectly, resource users will waste resources by using scarce resources for lower value purposes, and leaving abundant resources underutilized. That makes it crystal clear why the government and the Fed completely destroy the economy by meddling with their top-down, centrally planned approach. A great example of this is the government back in 2008 or prior to 2008, where they were pushing everybody to go into a home. That increased the prices of homes artificially, therefore an oversupply. We wasted scarce resources as a result. We built too many homes. That was a result mainly of the government coming in and artificially getting people into homes that otherwise could not afford them. Also, let's think about the Fed dropping interest rates to zero for almost 10 years. What did that allow? A boom in the shale industry that otherwise most likely would have been unprofitable. Therefore, the supply of oil goes up, and the price goes down. Therefore, the economy utilizes more than it otherwise would have. The economy gets distorted on artificially cheap resources. If you're a greenie or someone way on the left, you should hate the Fed and the government coming in distorting prices just as much as those free market loving Austrians. Now that we've got our head around that, let's take it right back to focusing on the utopian endgame of Klaus, Bigglesworth, Ida, and the global elite at the World Economic Forum. We totally understand why communism failed. There were no price signals, therefore the government had no data to distribute to the individual farmers, in this case, we'll use a simple economy, that produced cows, corn, and cotton. They didn't know how much to grow, therefore wasting resources, the economy collapses. And I think the global elites are smart enough to figure that out. So taking everything they have on their website, all of the information and what they are saying themselves, combining that with what I know about macroeconomics and what the social and political trends are right now, this is how I would connect the dots. And this is what I think they will push more and more into the future, headed towards their socialist or communist utopia they want to achieve by 2030. So it all starts with the Fed and the government. They have merged the balance sheets through MMT, like we discussed in step number 2. They've hired Janet Yellen, someone with experience with the Fed's balance sheet, now managing the Treasury's balance sheet, a perfect person to manage the merger. Then they come in with the Banking for All Act. We've all heard about this. This is where the individuals, the average Joe and Janes, and the businesses in the economy will have an account held at the Fed. Now it'll be held at the Treasury or the government. So all of the transactions from the average Joe's cell phone, the data in real time, will go straight to the government. And if I was Klaus, how I would do it is I would take that data and I would shoot it straight over to ABC, Artificial Intelligence, Brain Cloud. I would have ABC crunch all of that data in milliseconds and then spit out directions to all of the individuals producing goods and services in the real economy. Whether they were humans or robots or maybe humans controlled by that chip in their brain, who knows how crazy the World Economic Forum really is. And let's not forget, all of the average Joe's thoughts, dreams, and vital statistics are going into ABC in addition to the data that's happening with all the transactions occurring in the real economy. This gives ABC all the mega amounts of data needed to tell the farmers how much they should grow. Whether it's soybeans, and you say, George, what happened to the cows? Well, in 2030, we're all going to be vegetarians according to the World Economic Forum. And no, I'm not joking. Editor, throw up the clip. It tells them how much corn to grow and cotton. And you may be asking another question, why is my cotton in triangles? Very perceptive of you. It's because ABC doesn't like anything to be created in his own image. So the signal goes out here to grow more, grow less, and grow the same amount. So in the minds of the global elite, I think they see AI as a better way to allocate scarce resources with alternative uses. So if I'm the global elites, I see this as a solution to the problem that free market capitalism already solves. But in their eyes, they hate private property. They hate free market capitalism. Therefore, they can't have prices. So how do you get to the communist utopian state without all of the necessary evils of free market capitalism? It's the Fed coin, it's the Banking for All Act, artificial intelligence, and it goes right back to you will own nothing, have no privacy, and according to them, life will never be better. And right about now, your friend and family member Fred is going, George, what are you talking about? You crazy Austrians in your tinfoil hats. You don't know what's going on. The World Economic Forum is awesome. They're our friends. They don't want any type of system like you've outlined on the dry erase board. Well, fair enough. Let's take your friend and family member Fred right to a recent white paper from the Economic Forum titled Framework for Developing a National Artificial Intelligence Strategy. Notice they use the word national and they don't use the word private sector. So this is part of their fourth industrial revolution, which is a big component of the Great Reset agenda. And their timeline is starting off in 2020 and extends through 2025, and like we already know, 2030. It starts with phase one. This is utilization of AI and data. Phase number two, they want to institute public use of this AI and data and develop it across various domains. Phase three, the ecosystem or economy is built by connecting multiplying domains. An ecosystem is established as various multiplying domains are connected and merged. And they're using the word domain to replace sectors of the economy. So it would be easier to understand if we just read it in normal human speak. An ecosystem is established as various multiplying sectors of the economy are connected and merged. And then they give us this diagram, how it would work. Your data, everything that you say, every conversation, your vital signs, actions, and search history on the internet goes straight into ABC. Everything you do in your life and workspace goes straight into ABC. Nature and urban space also goes into ABC. And you'll notice they push for urban living more and more and more. And I think the reason they do this is so they can have smart cities. So everything is connected to the brain cloud. The more things they can connect to artificial intelligence brain cloud, the more efficiently they can allocate resources. And just to be very, very clear, this is how they're thinking. This is not how I'm thinking. I'm simply explaining their, we'll call it quote unquote logic. So all the data dumps into what they're calling the artificial intelligence as a service. I prefer ABC. And it creates complex application services. And this is just another way of saying an algorithm that would produce the same data as prices did before. Artificial intelligence then allocates the scarce resources and controls the goods and services produced in the real economy. And just so you can see, I'm not putting words in their mouth. We have an arrow coming out of the, we'll call it the new ecosystem or the new economy, going back into the personal lives of the individuals with new value creation or supply of goods and services. And ironically, they're calling this a virtuous cycle. What we just saw is their version of exactly what I have drawn on the whiteboard. And just an FYI, I drew this prior to finding the white paper. So when I drew this on the board and then started doing research and found that white paper, you can imagine how shocked I actually was, or maybe I shouldn't be shocked anymore. The bottom line is when I was growing up, we lived in the land of the free and the home of the brave. I don't spend too much time in the United States, and I've just come back over the past couple months, and I see very little freedom and very little bravery. In fact, with all these lockdowns, I see many fellow Americans that are eagerly trading all of their personal liberty and freedom for just an ounce of perceived safety. We've gone from the land of the free and the home of the brave to many people demanding that we live in the land of the lockdown and the home of the cowardly. But it doesn't have to be this way. You see, Rebel Capitalist isn't just the name of my program. It's the name of a movement. That's what I wanted it to be. We can all be rebel capitalists and stand up for free market capitalism. Stand up for private property rights, personal freedom, and liberty. It's up to us to make the decision right now to non-violently go out and spread the message of the benefits of our belief system and tell these central planners to get the government and the Fed out of our lives. And we've got to do it right now, or we're going to wake up in 2030, and this is what the world is going to look like. For more content that'll help you build wealth and thrive in a world of out-of-control central banks and big governments, check out this playlist right here, and I will see you on the next video.